Yo, what up, Street Talks? All right, another thought. This thought is about virtue flexing. So, okay, this is a thought. Have you ever had dinner with somebody who had different dietary preferences to you, and then they somehow made you feel guilty about the way that you ate? Or, the way you talk, dress, whatever, and you just kind of thought like, why did they make me feel so stupid or small or superior, inferior, blah blah? And then Nassim Taleb first mentions the notion of virtue signaling, and I was like, what's that? And I kind of read it. I was like, oh my god, like I just felt like a huge veil was just kind of lifted from me. So the basic notion of virtue signaling is everyone wants to signal to other people that they're being virtuous through, saving the planet, or, donating money to starving kids, whatever it may be. And I was kind of curious, is that like, oftentimes when people are trying to virtue signal, it seems very disingenuous. And I always get a little sus too when companies are like, we donate 0.01% of our profits to charities and stuff like that. And I'm like, is this just kind of an attractive marketing plan, or is it genuine? Is it the real thing? And I'm kind of convinced that I think people tend to fake virtue or virtue exhibit for disingenuous reasons, and we gotta kind of be skeptical and sus of other people who try to make us feel bad as a consequence otherwise, because what they're trying to do is what's best for them, is what's not necessarily what's best for you or society. Let me give another example. So there's this documentary that came out on Netflix called Game Changers or something, and I think somebody told me about it, about how going vegan will make you stronger and blah blah. And so I watched it, and I thought it was a pretty fun watch. And then the guy who's the host of it, I don't think he's actually has any sort of sinister things or notions. It's just it's an opinion, his thoughts, and it's like, okay, that's cool. And what I just found very interesting about it was, Arnold Schwarzenegger's in it. I'm like, what? Why is Arnold in this? And then I realized that James Cameron produced it. I'm like, oh, James Cameron, the guy who made Terminator and Avatar and blah blah, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, they're best friends. And so I'm like, okay, makes sense. And then I watch it, or I was reading some Wikipedia or something, and I was like, oh, James Cameron has some sort of vegan protein powder company or something like that. So I'm like, okay, makes sense. Dude has a business selling vegan protein powders, and then you make a film about the benefits of veganism. So I'm like, essentially we kind of have to be very skeptical of anyone who's virtue flexing or virtue signaling. I like to call it virtue flexing because generally society thinks that it tends to be bad manners to flex, and virtue signaling, I think signaling is kind of not a good word, because it's kind of like an academic phrase or word, is to signal something. It's okay, I kind of get it, but it's not vivid enough. And so I kind of prefer the notion of virtue flexing, where people are trying to flex their virtues, I'm so much more virtuous and morally superior to you because, I don't eat animals, and I only eat kale and quinoa, and, I do X, Y, and Z. And then, so the problem with virtue flexing, I think for people to virtue flex for the sake of virtue flexing, that's totally fine, right? My only personal qualm about virtue flexing is when people somehow try to make you feel bad or guilty or shameful, and they also try to purport that their way is the only legitimate way, and they're extremely intolerant to the way you act and do things. So for example, I have some friends who are vegan or vegetarian, pescatarian, whatever, but they're not gonna stop me or shame me from eating meat, which I love, because I'm like, yo, I'm not gonna try to shove meat in your mouth. I totally respect the fact that you want to be vegan for ethical or whatever reasons, but just don't try to superimpose your preferences upon me. And so I think this is where, thinking about notions of virtue flexing or virtue signaling is important, because I think there needs to be, in the society like which we live in, there needs to be mutual respect, or at least mutual tolerance of everyone else's preferences and the way that people do things. And this is why that I always get like a little bit sus whenever I meet people who proselytize veganism. Is I don't know if they're saying it because they think that veganism is good for health purposes. Like, I don't think anyone who's 100% hardcore vegan, I actually think that's not good for your health. But if people are vegan for ethical purposes, like, you know, we shouldn't kill animals, I'm like, that's totally fine. That's like 100% legitimate. Like, if you feel that way, that's totally cool. But the problem is people often, you know, they package both of those statements at once. So it's like, oh, it's good for your health and it's good for the animals and it's good for the planet. So it kind of ends up being a little bit tricky to disentangle, because I'm like, huh, are you doing it for ethical reasons, for health purposes, or whatever? And I was actually talking to a lady who works at Dunkin' Donuts, and you know, she says she's going vegan, and it was kind of interesting because she's like, yeah, you know, I know it's not really good for my health, because she's like, I still eat like vegan donuts anyways, because sugar is still vegan. But she was more like, yeah, you know, I don't really like the taste of meat, and you know, I whatever. So it's like, oh, I became vegan. So I'm like, okay, that's totally cool. So, but then the problem is when vegans try to make people like me, meat eaters, feel guilty about eating meat and the ecological effects, blah blah, then that just feels like, yo, just leave me alone, right? Like, I let you do you, let me do me. So often, you know, I consider myself kind of like a liberal Democrat, Californian, Berkeleyite, Bay Area. But I'm starting to get a little bit sus too, because like, I think everyone should be mutually tolerant of everyone else's beliefs, as long as your beliefs, you know, aren't intolerant towards other people, or you're not attacking, you know, or killing other people. And so same thing goes with freedom of speech, religion, whatever. Like another random thing too, like I personally am like, you know, I'm a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout. I got my rifle merit badge, I got my shotgun merit badge, I got my archery merit badge, and like, I'm personally kind of like against guns and gun ownership in general. I'm like, it's not really necessary. But if my friends or people I know want to do it, I'm like, you know, that's cool. Like, I'm not gonna try to convince you otherwise. So I think tolerance and open-mindedness and mutual respect for other people is essential. So anyways, next time someone tries to virtue flex on you, just kind of smile, nod, and just walk away.